Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, shimmering silver. And lo, it rained from the sky. Ripples of blue echoed through the air, akin to the early morning, as if the sun rent the veil of night. Terror enveloped me, but in wonderment, that fear fast diminished. The stiz of the night sky dulled in its presence, as the horizon was engulfed by billowy white clouds, tinged with fiery wisps at their fringes, as the light faded and the celestial gift plummeted to earth, its descent accompanied by a shrill and discordant whistle. The ephemeral day drew to a close and yielded once more to the night. The stars reclaimed their brilliance, and the blue turned to black. My eyes were unable to avert their gaze from this wondrous sight, for it was a blissful offering from the heavens that had fallen into the nearby woods. A gift meant for me to open. Curiosity stirred within me, urging me to quell any lingering doubts. I resolved to march towards the crater and pull at the ribbon. This treasure would be mine, and mine alone. I longed to weave my hands through its warmth, allowing it to cool against my breath. I loved it, truly and deeply. That distant thud that shuddered the house upon its landing was a summons directed at me, a beckoning that could not be ignored. It craved my affection. A nervous dread enveloped me as I ventured through the gnarled branches of the forest, the scent of gasoline and wood smoke pervading the air. The fumes stung my eyes, obscuring my surroundings in a milky haze. Without the need for sight, I followed the call that brought me to the hearth of this fire, not conveyed in words, but in a sorrowful melody that could be felt in each nerve of my being. Once again, the dread is hammered down, pushed deep below the all-encompassing love, until its weight rendered it to a mere powder. Large swells of smoke undulated from the center of the impact. They swirled in a tumultuous motion, reminiscent of the foaming waves of an enraged sea crashing upon steadfast rocks. Within this chaotic display, a cocoon of pale, crystalline air gleamed with grandeur. As I ventured closer, my sweat evaporated into wisps of vapor that quickly became one with the swelling smoke. With a sweeping motion, I waved my hand through the glaze and arrived at its core. A shimmering silver presence floated before me. The tears washed my eyes clear so that I could gaze upon it without hindrance. It blotted out the sky, an immense entity that defied reason. And yet I found myself able to cradle it within the palm of my hand. Its touch ignited the ground and transformed the landscape into a fiery inferno, while an inexplicable chill permeated the air. At first glance, it appeared a flawless, perfectly round sphere, but in the next moment, it danced and twirled around me like raindrops caught in a volatile storm. It possessed the ability to mirror the surroundings, reflecting the woods with pristine clarity. And then, in the blink of an eye, it transformed into a radiant light, coated in an oil-like substance that bestowed upon it all the colors of the rainbow, shifting in hue from dusk to dawn. "I am here," I said, though the words were not solely my own, as they harmoniously echoed from the mouths of others surrounding me. Men, women, and children wept in unison. We had all answered its call, yet my love surpassed theirs. The essence of who I am wailed as well, but I disregarded their cries and sought solace in the shade of the towering trees, those too strong and old to be ripped up from the ground. Their shade would shield me from the sight of what I had to do, what the silver needed of me. It could love only one. Their blood warmed my hands as the core of this silver was washed with a chill air. "Have I earned your love?" I asked. My voice resounded in solitude. The words curled in the air with grace like a spectral mist. The wind took my question, ascended high until it could no longer be seen, blended into the bright light of the silver entity. And in that moment, fear seized me. Incomprehensible utterances trembled through the broken branches of the surrounding trees. Leaves bled embers, and the ground receded beneath me. The dread and doubt that I had buried, crushed, and disregarded were no longer fleeting moments of uncertainty. They had consumed my entire existence. For a brief spell, I was free to see that I had become prey, groomed and lured by that which hungered mightily. I rose high, as light as a feather caught in the storm, akin to spoken words ensnared in searing mist on a cold night. The silver transmuted into something else entirely. Initially, it enveloped me in a blanket of velvet warmth. Soon thereafter, tendrils began to thread through my skin, knitting us together as one. At first, it felt like love, a pulse of soft ecstasy, goose-pimpling my skin. But that moment was fleeting. Soon after, I could feel pure ice weave through my bones. I looked on as it clambered over my body, its face taking shape until the silver became a mirror, the reflection a scared man, a familiar stranger. As it kissed me, I felt myself fall back down to earth and into the dark. The ground was where I awoke, reminiscent of an abandoned runt from the litter. Nestled amidst the fallen leaves, I awaited the break of true day. At first, I crawled, my movements uncertain, until the recollection of walking flooded back to me. Faltering over clumsy feet towards my mother, her radiance shimmered with pride. She couldn't hold back the tears. A memory, long forgotten, and not my own, brought to the surface only now that it was needed. I ran, as an inexplicable force propelled me forward, urging me to something unknown. It evoked within me an overwhelming desperation, an emotion so deep I struggled to grasp an understanding of its purpose. I dashed homeward, burst through the door, and tumbled up the stairs. A confusing dread clawed at its cage. The sight of an empty bed where two once slumbered brought me to tears. But why? In the adjacent room, a smaller bed intended for a child remained empty and unmade. Two voices among the countless last night now bore an eerie familiarity. The dried blood that coated my arms began to burn and itch. A lingering presence persisted within me, a parasite of the man that should be long lost amidst the rubble of the void. In boundless darkness, his tormented screams resounded and reverberated through the depths of my being, erupting from my own lips in a howl of pain, wrestling control. The feeble flickering of light, mere fleeting moments of dominance, witnessed this vessel gain possession of a knife. "I am your gift," I whispered to him, my voice laced with wisdom. "Watch from your shelter of safety as I give purpose to your existence. Allow my love to radiate through you, turning the shadows into everlasting day." Yet he paid no heed to my words, dismissing my guidance without a second thought. I plunged it deep into my throat, succumbing to the irrepressible urge to die, as if it had become my sole purpose. Deeper still, I drove the blade until the pouring wound wept tears of red. And then, shimmering silver, social proof. Ethan reoriented his phone and pushed his stocking cap back to reveal more of his hair before offering his audience a two-fingered peace sign. Hey, guys, what's up?" Aiden raked Ethan's hand. "Dude, what the hell? What's gotten into you?" Sam chortled, recording both of them on his phone through a cloud of steamy breath. "Scared? No," Aiden barked, glaring apprehensively into Sam's camera. "I'm black, moron. Shit like this gets a brother killed." In response to Aiden's misgivings, heart, laughing, and smiling emojis floated up Aiden's image on Sam's screen. Feeling smug, Sam showed Aiden the immediate, real-time results. Aiden rolled his eyes. "Whatever, fool. They ain't black." Ethan resumed a filming position with a sarcastic smile, framing the tall fence behind him in the background. "Don't worry, Aiden, buddy. We'll be good and gone before anybody notices. Come on, guys. Let's go. Let's go." Sam impatiently gestured to the shadowy mansion. Pressing on, Sam directed his mobile to the naked, claw-like limbs of bare trees that lined the drive, reaching over their heads. It don't look like anybody's been here lately, since the 60s, Aiden said, jutting his hands into his pockets and hunching his shoulders. Trespassing aside, something felt eerie about the property. He felt eyes crawling all over him. Been shuttered ever since. It was foreclosed on by the bank after Thaddeus's grandson died. The house is old, protected by some kinda historical preservation law. They wanted to put a Walmart here, but couldn't. It can't be knocked down. Our resident bookworm and brown noser, ladies and gentlemen, Ethan said, capturing him and Aiden in the shot and bowing to his camera. Yeah, I read, okay? Aiden said, shoving Ethan away. This is it, peeps, Sam said, angling his phone to take a wide shot of the property. Thornbrook Manor. Ethan interrupted Sam to draw a dramatic, wide-eyed slash across his throat with his finger. The third sorcerer. Annoyed, Aiden glanced side-eyed at Sam's phone and shrugged, speaking directly to Sam's followers. It's where the geocache told us to go next. Abhorrent ground, Sam whispered ominously, reciting a phrase they found written in the cache. Flipping the phone's camera to face him, his face was uplit in the darkness. WTF! What's that even mean? Built in the 1860s outside of Seattle, the Thornbrook property was considered an architectural gem of Victorian elegance and grandeur. Dilapidated, weathered, and crumbled, its glamorous splendor, however, was lost to the past. Situated on a lush estate, the mansion boasted a commanding presence with a towering 3-story roofline, with 4 chimneys and 2 pointed spires. Its exterior facade was crafted with intricate details, replete with ornate carvings of strange and fanciful beasts, sturdy stone pillars, and delicate trimmings that lent the structure an artistic flair. Its architect was both an engineer and an artist. Its front doors were made of rich mahogany and intricately carved, yet spray painted with urban gang tags. What is that? Sam said. He focused his camera on a carving along the structure's foundation. It had a rounded body with taloned hands, a sloping ape-like brow, and an angry expression bearing menacing, jagged teeth, yet had stone wings like a bird. It looked tethered to the building by a black iron chain. That's a water drain, Aiden replied. Water comes down the chain into the monkey's skull, spilling out the mouth. Ugh, Sam groaned, zooming in on it. That's crazy. What kind of acid were these guys on? Opium, Aiden clarified with a nod, thinking, then added, leaning into Sam's camera. That or absinthe, herbs, sugar, ice, wood alcohol, big-ass psychedelic effects brought on from consuming thujone, a compound. Look! Ethan interrupted, cutting Aiden off, holding his own phone over his head as they approached a ruined reflecting pool in an overgrown garden sanctuary. Surrounded by a wrought iron fence, The pool's still black surface reflected the sky's cold, starry void. "There's the statue," Adis rumbled into Sam's camera. Friendly heart emojis raced up the side of his face. "Yeah, well, if you're curious and want to know more, DM me." "Come on, Brainiac," Sam scolded, slapping Aiden on his shoulder. Sam turned his camera's flash away from the monkey creature to send it receding into the darkness. Cautiously entering the gate, they circled the pool to step through an overgrowth of thorny black bushes with serrated, tar-colored leaves. A marble statue of a Victorian gentleman, leaning heavily on a cane, loomed over the pool's edge. Soiled by centuries of grime and vigorous splotches of mold, thorny brambles climbed its legs and torso. "Dr. Thaddeus Parlow," Aiden whispered, scanning through Wikipedia articles on his device. He passed the links on to the audience through social media. Sam zoomed in on Parlow's vandalized head. Chiseled away, it looked as if it were mauled. Chunks of marble were gouged from Parlow's face. Hundreds of shocked and gasping emojis went scrolling by. Sam zoomed back, panned, and held his phone horizontally to keep Ethan and the statue in the frame. "We've got more than 1,600 viewers, man. Play it," chided Ethan's followers. Little blue bubbles of text went floating by. Okay, I'm going to play it. Just hang on," Ethan promised his followers before turning his phone around to navigate its settings. Ethan, I don't think..." Aiden's eyes trailed from his phone to the water. Sam could barely contain himself and removed his cap. He fixed his phone on Ethan. "Man, this is going to be so great," reflected upon the smooth black surface of the pool. Aiden saw a sharp, vivid reflection of the Milky Way. However, looking up, ambient light from the city obscured the night sky, and it was cloudy, overcast, a typical Seattle night. Puzzled, Aiden absently asked, Ethan?" Closing on Sam, Ethan held up his phone up to Sam's and pressed play to stream the video. A cheesy, AI-generated black and white image of a man with the head of an octopus appeared, followed by a grainy, scratchy recording, as if sampled from a wax cylinder. "Fahanglui maglwanaf Cthulhu ralya wagahanagul fetarn," recited the octopus man in a low, spectral voice. Thousands of emojis raced up Sam's display, and his follower count skyrocketed. Elated, Sam pumped the air, shouting, Yeah, Wuganagulftagan, fuckers, bring it on." Ethan mocked with a sarcastic sneer and a crude, offensive gesture into Sam's camera. "Aya, ia, Cthulhu ftagn, to drill ngkthikri dagon," the recording concluded, leaving only a still, uncomfortable silence. Seeing the statue's mutilated head reflected in the pool of dreamy starlight, Aiden backed away to glance at Thaddeus, and then back at the water. The statue's angle against the surface was all wrong. "How's that possible?" he breathed, Replaying the video on his phone, Ethan shook his mobile at Sam and shouted, "That's it! The third Sorcerer's Challenge! Woo! Look!" Sam exclaimed, holding out his phone. A Bitcoin balance was leaping ahead in hundreds of increments. "We won, man! Where's all of that shit coming from?" Ethan said, peering at Sam's phone. Sam turned the phone toward him and manipulated its settings. "Dunno. Some guy in Amsterdam." Ethan squinted. "Amsterdam? Where's that?" "Who cares?" Sam exclaimed. "We're gonna be rich." "Sam," Aiden pleaded, pointing to the pool and gripping Sam's jacket by the sleeve. "Something's wrong." Sam jerked his arm back. "Bro, what the?" Following Aiden's hand, Sam saw the impossibly bright, brilliant universe and the crisp reflection of Thaddeus Parlow's statue, except it wore a ghostly, bearded face. Before Sam could react, Ethan, his back to the pool, held his phone contemptuously under the statue's chin to replay the video. Sam returned his phone to a recording position. "Ia, Cthulhu Vahtagn, to drill Ankhthakakri Dagon," repeated the grainy octopus man. Sam and Aiden cried out, just as a massive blue and green scaled tentacle burst from the reflecting pool, gripped Ethan's leg, then dragged him screaming into the water. The light from Ethan's submerged phone sank into the pool's depths and disappeared. "Jesus fuck!" Aiden shouted, throwing himself from the side of the pool against the iron fence. Sam's phone, his thousands of followers witnessing the entire event, burst into a flurry of shocked, worried, and sad emojis. From the shadows, the chained monkeys squatting along the manor's cornerstones grinned, howling in terror. Aiden grabbed Sam to bolt for the iron gate. But as they ran, the thick, thorny, weedy brambles snagged their jeans and shot out to wrap around their legs. Tripped, Sam fell, sending his phone skittering across the cobblestone surrounding the pool. "Sam!" Aiden cried, reaching back for him, only to find Sam's body ensnared in the grips of the wicked Flora, pinned against the fence's bars. Sam pleaded, extending his arm to Aiden. "Help! Help!" Tugging, the thorns ripped into Aiden's skin and tore at his legs and ankles. He could feel the lacerations, the blood saturating his jeans. Aiden struggled and tried to get closer to Sam, only to find tendrils of strangling, grinding vines cutting into Sam's throat. His eyes bulged and bled, and he choked on a protruding mouthful of black leaves. It began to rain. Scared, senseless, Aiden scrambled backward to lunge for the iron gate. Shut tight by the snaking weeds, it barely budged. Aiden glanced behind him in horror. The statue of Dr. Thaddeus Parlow remained as it was, and always had been, except its vivid, colorful reflection was a ghastly monster with a translucent nest of writhing tentacles waving from its jaw. The pool was still, unmoving, as if coated in a layer of sheer, translucent ice. The raindrops did not affect its surface. The pool was disorienting, mesmerizing, spinning. It was as if the whole of the universe lay open at Dr. Parlow's feet. "Absinthe, my ass," Aiden shouted, bracing his foot against an iron post to pull at the gate with all of his weight to rip it free of the twisting vines. Fleeing from the sanctuary, a wind bellowed from the chimneys, blowing from inside the mansion with a terrifying roar. Slipping on the mud, his heart pounding, lungs burning, Aiden ran with everything he had down the drive and scaled the fence. And without even a second glance, he sprinted away, leaving his friends forever at Thornbrook Manor. Glowing in the darkness, the video of the octopus man replayed on a loop, while a mass of emojis, check-in waves, Bitcoin balances, and DM requests flooded Sam's phone, before a green tentacle reached out from the water, cupped it, and slowly slid it into the pool, well beyond the fence. "I'm gonna take a freight train down at the station, Lord. I don't care where it goes. Gonna climb a mountain, the highest mountain. I'll jump off, nobody gonna know. The Marshall Tucker Band. I'm so angry. I did my best. I really did. That road from the army base where we live now, running out west towards that looted Costo outlet near Corvallis, is littered with abandoned cars and trucks, all rusting out, tires flat, gas tank lids and caps open. I know all the places where you have to go off-road to get around them, but there are always things you just can't predict. The law of unintended consequences, they call it. That's what happened to me, I guess. I became an unintended consequence. I don't know. Maybe that's not right. I'm not thinking very clearly right now. Molly, too, my Staffordshire Terrier. She was an unintended consequence as well, maybe. I guess. I felt worse about her in the end, honestly. I loved Molly so much. Those little fuckers. I hate them so much, and now I am them. The old Toyota 4Runner was running pretty smooth despite the degraded quality of the fuel that was left to us, and it only bogged down on me a few times during the drive, but never stalled out. When I reached the parking lot, I came to a stop by the loading docks, like always. I grabbed the cut-down Remington 12-gauge and stuffed the box of pumpkin balls into my jacket pocket. Normally, I would have left the driver's side door open, but I had to keep Molly inside. I certainly wasn't bringing her in there. The rear door to the Costco was still propped open, just like it always is, and I found the battered old orange hand truck sitting right there in the corner, just like it always is. Things looked much as they always did. I couldn't hear anything, but I still kept the shotgun pointed directly ahead of me as I entered the store floor from the back room. I clicked on the small flashlight mounted to the barrel with some electrical tape and squinted into the darkness. I waited 15 seconds, then another 15, and then I entered. I left the hand truck right there and proceeded very slowly. It was my turn to do this today, and I never argued against it when my turn came. But Kaylee was my only remaining child, and I had to get back to her. I was in no big rush. I simply had to do my job and get back. I'm just so angry now. I really messed this up. I took a can of baked beans off the closest shelf and threw it as far as I could down one of the aisles, and then I shuffled back a few steps to see what would happen, listening for the sound of footsteps, ready to run if there were too many. I heard nothing. I waited 15 seconds, then another 15, and then I moved forward. A short time later, I had the first load of supplies stacked up on the hand truck. I left it there and checked the back room again with the flashlight beam on my shotgun, and then checked the back parking lot for a moment just to make sure everything was cool out there too. Seeing nothing of concern, I hauled the first load of supplies out and loaded them into the back of the 4Runner as quietly as possible. When I returned, I took all of the same precautions. I made no assumptions, but again, everything seemed clear, so I went ahead and gathered up the rest of the supplies. In the end, I had canned foods, batteries, bottled water and juice, toilet paper, napkins, Tylenol, garbage bags, t-shirts, vitamins, and a few other things. There wasn't very much left at that Costco by that point, but we didn't go much further into the more previously populated urban areas until it became truly necessary. Again, I checked the back room and the parking lot before I hauled the hand truck out through the loading dock door and placed everything in the back of the old Toyota SUV as quietly as possible. Then I heard the sound of something being knocked over, coming through the rear door of the Costco outlet. It sounded metallic, maybe a bucket or a garbage pail being tipped over, or something like that. I pointed my shotgun in that direction for a second, and then jumped into the driver's seat of the Toyota and drove off. I had what I came for, and Molly was barking like crazy. It would take at least 5 or 6 hours, maybe more, to get back to the base, and I had already traveled at least that same amount of time, just getting there earlier that day. I would definitely have to refuel from the tanks in the back soon. I was ready to push on through, but when it started raining, I knew it would take much longer, and it would be much more dangerous. I had to rethink my plans. I knew a place. It was more important that I just got back to Kaylee than getting back right away. I knew she would be scared if I didn't return that night, but that's obviously better than not returning at all. My sister Amy would comfort her as much as possible. I wasn't looking forward to my night either, but Amy would take care of her until I got there with the supplies. Like I said, I knew a place. It was just past a highway exit sign for Langhorne Avenue. That sign has a red letter X spray painted across it. Everyone knows what that means. Just past that exit, along the side of the road just before you reach Redmond, there is a little sleep spot we sometimes use when we have to. It has proven safe. It used to be a small electrical substation, just a little 8x12 steel structure, about 10 feet tall, that once housed some power transmission equipment. At some point, someone gutted it out, and you can still see the old components rusting there, just outside of the door, the tall grass growing up through the cracks. I pulled the Toyota around in front of that old substation, but I kept the engine running, and I stayed inside for a little while and used my binoculars to search the surrounding area for signs of movement. The sky was gray and the sun was setting, but I saw nothing of concern, so eventually I grabbed the shotgun and my travel bag and got out of the SUV as cautiously and quietly as possible. I left the driver's side door open, despite the light rain. I didn't want to make any unnecessary noise, and if I needed to make a quick escape, that could make the difference. Once Molly and I were inside that old substation, I quickly closed the door behind me and dropped the zip-tie bundled rebar bolts into place. Then I stood there by the door for a while, holding my shotgun, but I didn't hear anything outside, and eventually I relaxed a bit. They don't like the rain, but you never really know. The filthy old mattress was a welcome sight. I sat there as I ate a cold can of Chef Boyardee raviolis. They were so delicious, and I took my time. It was a treat. I had dog food and water for Molly, too. She was happy as well. Afterwards, I laid my sleeping bag out on the mattress and Molly and I fell asleep to the fading sound of rain pattering off the steel roof. It was nice. A few hours later, I was awoken by the sound of Molly's growling and barking. She was standing by the door, and I could hear the sounds of screaming and scratching coming from the other side. I grabbed my shotgun and pulled Molly back, breathing heavily, hoping the door would hold. I checked the rebar bolts. The door seemed solid. After a while, the rain picked up. The violent sounds coming from outside faded away, and then I set the shotgun down and returned to the bed. It was hard to find sleep again. I stared up into the darkness for a while. It was just over 3 years ago when it all began. A facility in the woods of northern Montana where they housed and performed tests on children who had been exposed to experimental biochemical weapons in various locations around the world. Things were fine there until they were not. The confused and sometimes conflicting news reports at the time mostly said that there was an antivirus that was administered to those kids on a daily basis. But one day the supplies ran out. Then, by the next morning, that facility was overrun. Blood and gore. The fences went down. But what no one knew until then was that it was contagious. Most people past the age of adolescence quickly succumb to it, but not everyone. No one really knows why. It all happened very quickly, and then it was all over, and I mean all of it. Everything. The world is very different now. This part of the world, anyway. I really don't know what it's like elsewhere. We don't receive news reports anymore. I eventually fell asleep and woke up a few hours later with Molly cuddled up by my side. I fed her some kibble for breakfast, and then I ate a granola bar and drank a bottle of water and packed up my gear. I looked out through the 2 small peepholes before leaving the safety of the substation with Molly by my side. The rain had stopped, but it was still gray and cloudy. I guess I made a little too much noise unbolting and opening the door. As soon as we stepped outside, I heard the clattering from behind the substation and on the low rooftop overhead. They must have just waited out there all night. I didn't know they were capable of that. I thought they just retreated back into the woods once they quit the hunt. Molly paid the price, not me. I hate myself for that. I hate myself. When they pounced, I fired my shotgun twice and blasted 2 of them in the chest and put them down. Both teenage boys, stark naked and filthy, with elongated nails and teeth, long straggly hair, moving with predatory speed. Unfortunately, there were 3 more who fell on Molly. 2 adults and a kid. I was about to take another shot, but they were all over her. And trust me, she was fighting back like a fucking monster. But I just saw no way to not hit her as well. After a few seconds, I realized she would soon be dead anyway. So I just unloaded my remaining 4 shells and killed them all, including Molly. I was so angry, but I started crying right away. I'm still enraged. They made me kill Molly, those little fuckers. As I was making my way to the driver's side door of the Toyota with my head down and staring at the grass through my tear-blurred vision, that's when the last one got me. He was just a little kid, maybe 10 years old. Perhaps that's why he held back when the others rushed in. I don't know. Who can say? Who knows how they think? I guess I will know soon enough. It's already starting. He came around from the back of the lift gate and dove at me and bit me on my forearm. There was only the one quick bite before I turned around and smashed him in the forehead with the butt of my Remington. But as soon as I got into the forerunner and closed the door, I could see that he had drawn blood. I wiped it off with my bandana and poured some rubbing alcohol on it. I was scared, but I still had some hope. I had my fingers crossed, but I still had some hope. That hope faded quickly along the drive back to the base. I feel sick now. I feel very sick, and it's just getting worse. My head is starting to pound, and I feel like I might need to vomit. My teeth and gums and my fingernails and toenails are all starting to ache. My vision is changing, and my throat is dry. I'm starting to make some involuntary growling sounds, and I cannot stop gripping the steering wheel with all of the strength in my hands. I want to just get out of the Toyota and run. It doesn't even matter where. I was planning to just drop off these supplies by the front gates of the base and then leave. But it's still at least a 2-hour drive, and I am afraid of who or what I will be by the time I get there. I think I have to just turn around right now and drive in the opposite direction for as long as I possibly can. I have reloaded the Remington, and I am keeping it handy. I am sweating and drooling pretty hard now. I can't help it. My clothes are also starting to feel extremely uncomfortable. I think I might need to pull over and remove my shirt and boots soon. Maybe my jeans too. I don't think I can take this too much longer. I keep looking at the woods along the side of the road. I just want to run off into the trees. I want to scream. I want to eat something while it is still breathing. Mostly, I just want to end this before it gets worse. I know that I will never see Kaylee again, and even more than what happened to Molly, that's what makes me feel so sick. I'm sure my sister Amy will take good care of her, but still, I just feel so sick. I keep looking at the woods and at the Remington. I just have to keep driving for a little bit longer now. The radio stations all went dark years ago, and there's only one stupid old CD stuck inside the dashboard stereo in this Toyota for me to listen to as I drive, the Marshall Tucker Band. So I turn it up. What else am I going to do? The hum of the motor is hurting my head, and the lyrics seem right. I'm gonna find me a hole in the wall. I'm gonna crawl inside and die. But no, I don't think so. That would be too easy. I think I'm gonna die with my boots on, and I'm definitely gonna bring some of you little bastards with me. Get ready to eat some of these 12-gauge pumpkin balls. It's not going to be pretty. I'm gonna cut some of you little demons in half while I still can. As many of you as possible until my ammo runs out. I owe that much to Kaylee and Molly and Amy and all of the others. I see a red letter X spray painted on the exit sign up ahead. I'll be there soon. You'll know when I arrive, you little fuckers. Trust me, you'll know. Scratchy. Hold on, the line went a bit scratchy. Sandy? You're still there? Hi, Sandy. As I was saying, I think we have rats in the house. The night before last we were in bed and some god-awful noise woke me up. And no, it wasn't Ian snoring. You do grow accustomed to such things over 50 years of marriage, believe it or not. No, it was a scratching sound coming from the skirting behind the headboard. So I give Ian a good shove. No luck there. The man would have slept through Pompeii without so much as a twitch, let me tell you. Although, I don't imagine he can be sleeping all that well. That rash is back. I told you about his rash, didn't I? I keep telling him, stop scratching it. But will he listen? Anyway, at first I thought it was the pipes, you know. I swear the water system in this house hasn't been replaced since the Romans. I've told Ian, told him 1,000 times. Ian, I say, we have to get the pipes fixed. One of these days they'll burst, and it'll be me. You and the cats floating around the house on the bloody sofa like it's Noah's Ark. So I get off the bed, and I stoop to listen, and immediately I can tell it isn't the pipes at all. It's quite distinct. The sound of rummaging against the wood like little claws, burrowing. Rats do have claws, don't they? And the thing is, last night I heard the same sound, but this time it was coming from behind the cabinet. You know, the big one. The one with Ian's old tennis trophies. And I didn't even bother trying to wake the lug up this time. No, I jump out of bed, and I pull out the cabinet, and lo and behold, droppings all over the carpet. Not only that, but the same irritating sound started at the other end of the room by the bed again, and not 10 minutes later, in the wall by the phone right where I'm sitting now. Oh, I do hope they aren't chewing through the telephone wires. Aren't telephone wires rat-resistant? I'd hate it if I couldn't talk to you, Sandy. Could that be why the line is scratchy? Speaking of scratchy, I woke up this morning and my scalp was itching all over. Good job Ian's asleep, because I've been telling him not to scratch. And here I am scratching so hard my hair's falling out like it's bloody Chernobyl. I wonder if the cats have fleas, but they've never had them before. Oh, I'm so stupid. Of course, it must be the rats carrying the fleas. There are at least 10 of them now, all rummaging around, picking at the plaster, the persistent little buggers. I swear if Ian wasn't here and they all broke through at once, I'd have to call the police. For the life of me, I wouldn't know what the hell to do. I've cleaned the bedroom though, and, oh, by the way, I bought some of those new metal scourers. You know the ones? Everyone said how good they are. I've been all around the tops and the skirting boards with them, one in each hand like a bloody Dalek. Exterminate! Exterminate! They do the job, though. My goodness, the bedroom has never been so spotless. You simply must try them. Sandy, you don't think they'd work on fleas, do you? I'm starting to feel them on my arms and legs as well as in my hair. I hope they don't aggravate Ian's rash. It's already spread up his neck and over his face. I'm looking at him now, the poor little bugger. He hasn't scratched in a while, though, bless his soul. A fighter, aren't you, Ian? Ian? He could sleep through Hiroshima and Nagasaki? That man could. Hold on. Goodness, can you hear that? There must be 20 of them now. How do they multiply so quickly? Go away. I don't have any cheese. My husband can't eat cheese. The willful little buggers. Any more, and they'll have the telephone wires, I'm sure of it. If the line goes dead, I'm sorry, love. I'll pop in that phone booth near the pharmacy on Wednesday when I go to get Ian's prescriptions. He's on so many pills now, he rattles when he walks. Not that he walks much. The lug. Let's go for a walk, Ian, I say. But will he listen? Let's get you out of the house, Ian. It'll be good for you. No luck there, Sandy. Let me tell you. Oh, speaking of luck, did you manage to get hold of that exterminator that Ian recommended? You didn't? Ian. Ian! Sandy says the telephone number we gave her for the exterminator is disconnected. It's a bloody shame, Sandy. So, I guess the rats are still there, scratching, burrowing into the woodwork, crawling all around the walls, are they? I bet you can't even sleep of a night, can you? Poor thing. How awfully cruel. How many did you say? 50 now? Jesus, they're multiplying. That's practically the Black Death. What does your husband have to say about all this, Sandy? Surely he... Hang on a second, love. Don't go anywhere. Oh, those new metal scourers do work on fleas. Oh, ooh, that's the ticket. I must call the cats in. They'll be right as rain in no time. Dalek, exterminate, exterminate. Sandy, you're still there? Your husband must have something to say about all this. Ian! Ian! The rats are going to get through and Sandy doesn't know what the hell to do. Ian! Wake up, Ian! I'm so sorry, Sandy. The rash has spread all over, bless his soul. Sandy, hello? Hello? Oh no, the line's gone all scratchy. They must have got to the telephone wires. You hear that, Ian? I said they must have got to the telephone wires. Ian, I love you, darling. But goodness, you could sleep through hell itself, you could. Bloody lug. Who sleeps 3 days and 3 nights without so much as a twitch? I know what you need. How about a record? Okay, what do we have here? Aha. Glenn Miller. Perfect. Isn't it scratchy compared to the newer ones? But all the best ones are scratchy, aren't they? Look, darling, I'm dancing. La la, la la la. Can you see me dancing just like I used to? Look at me go. I'm 19 again. Oh, don't mind all the blood. It's only flea's blood. I'll clean it off later with my new scourers. Why don't you get up and dance with me? La la, la la la. Come on, Ian. Ian, wake up. Please wake up. Please wake up. They'll scratch their way in, Ian. They'll get through the walls if you don't wake up. Rachel's Tower, Rachel's Tower. It's hard to imagine that we were all so young once, and how the world stretched out before us with seemingly endless possibilities. My friends and I managed to rent an old house in the now famous wine destination town of Napa, California, in the early 1970s. The town wasn't as famous then as it is now. The house was huge and out of place in the poor neighborhood of small, closely packed dwellings. 2 40-foot date palm trees perfectly framed the front of the house, as well as the spacious covered porch on which we would often sit. The house itself was 2 stories high, wood shingled, had lots of windows, and a large number of small bedrooms upstairs. The house had been there a long time. There were rumors it had once been a house of ill repute sometime in the distant past, but no proof. The truth was that no one really knew why there were so many bedrooms, but it was great for us because the more people the house could accommodate, the cheaper the individual rent. A 3-story wood shingled tower graced the backyard. At the top of the tower was a room that had 4 windows facing each direction. The structure could have been a windmill or pump house at one time, but the blades were long gone, and no one knew what it was currently used for, as the landlords had the door padlocked. Many wondered what was in the tower. Sometimes people thought they saw someone in one of the windows at the top, but it was mostly when they were in altered states of mind, which was fairly often due to the frequent parties. So, the sightings weren't taken that seriously. And besides, the only access to the tower was a single door, which was locked from the outside. No one at the house had the key, and the landlords rarely came by since we always managed to pay the rent on time. During the year we managed to stay there before being evicted, there were some epic parties thrown. It was at one of these parties, about 2 months into our stay, that I first met Rachel. My initial encounter with her was undoubtedly influenced by the effects of beer and some killer weed I had just smoked, but nonetheless, she made a powerful impression on me. The first thing I noticed about her was her long, dark, curly hair, which stood in contrast to her almost porcelain skin. However, as she got closer, it was her unusual bluish-green eyes, which seemed to be her most dominant feature. I suddenly felt lost in some type of mental fog, as my whole world seemed to narrow down to the vision of her in front of me. Time came to a stop. I must have been staring at her for some time when a musical voice broke through my stoned stupor. "Charlie, you seem like you are in some kind of trance, or is it just good weed?" She laughed. I was shocked out of my reverie and snapped back to the reality of the party going on around me. On her face was an amused smile, but I still didn't know who she was. "Sorry for staring. You're right. It was powerful smoke." I chuckle. "Forgive me, but I don't think I know you. How do you know me?" "Oh, Charlie, everyone knows your name around here. You're quite the legend." "I am," was the only thing my drug-dulled mind could think of to say. I was kicking myself internally. "Of course you are. It seems your nicknames include Captain Cosmic and Space Cowboy, based on your love of getting stoned. and then talking about strange and unusual topics. Isn't that right, Charlie? She teases me. She's right about that, but I still didn't know who she was, and have never seen her before. Well, mystery woman, you do know a few things about me, but I still don't know you, or your name. Are you new to town, or do you know someone here? Oh, I'm Rachel. And no, I'm not new to town. In fact, I've been here for a long, long time, longer than you can imagine, and I've got some stories to tell. I'm fascinated by this woman and don't know why, but I want to know more. Rachel, I'm all ears. Let's grab a beer and find a quieter spot to talk. Well, I picked you out of everyone here because of your reputation for liking the unusual. I hope you're ready for what I have to say, because I do believe in honesty, and I'm certainly out of the ordinary. She smiles. I assured her that I could handle whatever she wanted to say, even though I was already starting to wonder what I had gotten myself into. So, we find a spot in the backyard, by the tower, where it is quieter, since the main party is in the house. She turns down the beer I offered, but tells me the strangest story I had ever heard. I still have trouble wrapping my mind around it. Rachel started off by telling me she is a ghost, and I can't help but laugh. This had to be the most unusual woman I've ever met in my still young life. When my laughter calmed down, she smiled and continued. It seemed like other ghost stories I had heard before. Her large family were the first occupants of the house a little over 100 years ago, and she had died on the property and now found herself bound to it. I'm wondering if this is all she has, so I asked her the obvious question about why she is so solid if indeed she is a ghost. She told me that over the years, with a great deal of practice, she had learned how to project a shell, a manifestation, of herself. This I also found a little amusing, until she asked me to feel her pulse. I find nothing in the wrist or neck, and her body, although not cold, is cooler than one would expect. My amusement was dying quickly, and suddenly, I started to feel some real fear. She saw it, and held my hand while telling me she meant me no harm. She said she picked me to tell not only because I might be the most open to who she was, but also because she really liked me. It seemed that she could only maintain her projection for a limited time, and spent most of her existence in the spectral state people typically associate with ghosts. Therefore, she had observed a great deal about all who lived at the house, while being unseen herself. It seemed Rachel had concentrated her observations on me. She asked me if I needed, or could handle, proof positive of who she was. I wasn't sure, but with more reassurance from her, I agreed. So while still holding one of my hands, she smiled and slowly faded into nothingness. My heart rate jumped, and even though I thought I could handle it, the reality proved more difficult than imagined. The shell of what I had considered possible or impossible was suddenly ripped away. There was nothing where her hand had touched mine. Luckily, she reappeared very quickly and hugged me as I slowly calmed down with her seemingly solid body holding mine. When I had recovered and felt more myself, we continued to talk. I got a real feel for the loneliness and isolation she felt being stranded on the property perhaps forever. She didn't know or understand why her spirit couldn't leave. Rachel had only recently been able to perfect her manifestation enough to pass as a living human being. She finally felt it safe to appear at one of our parties where it would be easy to just blend in without a lot of questions. For her, it felt amazing to finally be able to interact with people after so many years of being invisible to the world. Evidently, she knew a lot about all who lived in the house or visited on a regular basis. Rachel knew more about me than anyone else because she said she liked me from when I first stepped over the threshold of the house. the tower was her special place to be. At the top, she could look out and see what was going on at some distance from the house in all directions. It was the closest she could come to escaping the property and pretending she was part of the wider world. The fact that the landlords kept the door padlocked to prevent injury and liability guaranteed her privacy in the top room. After our first meeting, we would meet on a daily basis for as long as she could maintain her solid form, which would be a few hours at most. Rachel and I collaborated on a cover story to explain who she was, where she came from, what she did, and to answer any other questions that might be asked about her. Luckily, most of those who lived or partied in the house accepted her for who she appeared to be. She quickly became part of the culture of the house, and eventually, most considered her my girlfriend. As time went on, my feelings for her became more and more intense. Unbelievable, I was actually falling in love with a ghost. I tried to bring the outside world to her as much as I could with books, newspapers, music, pictures, and any other thing I could do. One time, I arranged for a beach party in the backyard on a warm summer day. I brought in some sand, beach chairs, large umbrellas, beach balls, and even a recording of waves crashing. We set up a volleyball court and a small above-ground plastic pool filled with cold water. People wore their swimsuits and we played beach volleyball, sat around in the small pool, and played surf music to enhance the mood. Rachel loved it and stayed as long as she could maintain her form. "Thanks, Charlie. This is great. It gives me just enough to imagine I'm at the beach again." She hugs me, and I almost feel she is really alive. "Well, you do look awfully hot in that bikini I got you. Not like a ghost at all. You know just the thing to say to make a spook feel sexy." She teased and kissed me. My friends and roommates came to accept her, as one of us, and she reveled in it. She seemed to have fallen as much in love with me as I had with her. Our intimacy was limited because of her situation, but that didn't seem to matter that much to either of us. There was something much deeper going on. It was so strange and surreal that I was the only one who knew what she really was, and I couldn't tell anyone else. Of course, all good things come to an end sooner or later. Given the way we partied and the previous warnings we had from our landlord and police, it was just a matter of time before we were kicked out of the house. Rachel and I knew it would happen, and we tried to get in as many good times and memories in before it did. Obviously, we were both very sad about parting, and our last day together was full of tears. We tried to formulate plans to meet up periodically after the eviction. The difficulty was, she couldn't leave the property, which would now be rented by others, and I couldn't come on the property without trespassing. After being evicted, I would walk by the property on pre-arranged days on the front sidewalk. If possible, and no one was looking, Rachel would appear as close to the sidewalk as she could, and we would talk. If we could get close enough to each other, we could kiss or hold hands for a short time. We did this for years, whenever it could safely be arranged. I got on with my life, went to college, married, got a teaching job, had children, and grew old. During this time, I still would meet her when I could. I was growing older and older, yet she remained eternally young. Several times I found excuses to walk my wife or kids by the house so Rachel could see them. She was never jealous and understood that there were things she couldn't give me, and I had to live my life. Rachel was always glad for me, while I secretly felt bad for her. She was bound to the property for eternity and denied any type of real life. As my life became more crowded and complicated due to work and other concerns, I visited less and less, but never stopped entirely. Eventually, my kids left the house, got married, and, had jobs in other places. I saw them less and less, and phone calls or internet were not the same. My wife died, my health took a turn, and my time was limited. I became the old man I never thought I would become. Now, it is late night, and I have secretly arrived onto the property. I am sitting against the tower, and Rachel is by my side, holding my hand. I reach for the pills that will release me and swallow them down. Leaning my head against Rachel, I wait and hope the property will accept me. Call of the Marrow. Having loaded ice chests full of freshly caught crab into the back of his muddy 4x4, secured his 16-foot red and white Orkney strikeliner to the trailer attached to the vehicle, and returned to the pier to retrieve the nylon mesh crab pots left behind, Miles Burke caught sight of something bobbing in the water, an object he hadn't noticed there before. He recognized it at once as an old-style lobster pot, its slats covered in thick brown seaweed, its netting encrusted with barnacles. Mud and silt clung to its frame, and plant matter dangled from its corners, as though it had been buried at the bottom of the creek for decades. He was confused at first about where it could have come from, but then remembered the trouble he'd had hauling up the last of his pots. It had gotten snagged on something at the bottom of the creek, and he'd struggled to yank it loose. Maybe this Pirates of the Caribbean type relic had come loose too, then drifted ashore in the wake of his boat's churning engine. Whatever the case, he shrugged it off as insignificant following his initial fascination and busied himself stowing the rest of his gear. Someone else could discover it, a local fisherman or curious child. It would make their day and give them something to talk about in this sleepy, coastal town. His eyes kept flicking to it as he worked, however, a curiosity growing that couldn't be quelled. It was probably nothing, but if the cage was as old as it looked, it could be of value. This notion nagged at him, so after depositing his cleaned and empty crab pots in the belly of the boat, he returned with a long-handled ice hook and used it to fish the cage out of the foam. It was cold and wet, slimy to the touch, but that didn't bother him. Hitching the hook to his belt, he turned the cage this way and that, confirming it was vintage, made of wooden slats, rope netting, and leather hinges. He identified the location of its circular trapdoor, but was unable to access it due to the dense accumulation of muck clogging it up. Now it was in his hands. He decided it couldn't be as ancient as he'd thought. The wood didn't smell or feel rotten. It had clearly been in the water a long time, and there was something inside. He could hear it slosh about when he shook it, but he couldn't find a chink in its algae armor to see what. Curiosity mounting, he held the cage tight against his chest and plunged the fingers of his free hand into the kelp. The fronds felt rubbery, springy, and refused to come away, instead seeming to hug the pot tighter. After a few moments, Miles became frustrated and glared at the brown stuff in annoyance. This was not how seaweed worked. The seagulls overhead seemed to agree. Circling restlessly, their shrill cries grew louder, more obnoxious, as though urging him to get the cage open and reveal its contents, or abandon it and leave it where it belonged. He winced beneath their barks, resisting the urge to tell them to shut up. Voices reached his ears, and he turned to see a pair of wizened old fogies in tweed flat caps and woolen jumpers making their way down towards the pier. He wasn't in the mood for small talk, so he hurried to the Land Rover, returning the ice hook to the boat as he passed. The cage was his now, as was whatever was within, and he didn't want to explain himself to locals. Placing the cage like a slumbering infant on the newspaper that occupied the passenger seat, he pulled his door shut and started the engine. Out of habit, he tapped the screen of his phone, which was clutched in the arms of a holder secured to the windscreen. 6 missed calls. 6 more on top of the 5 that morning. He didn't have to check to know they were from his wife, his father, his solicitor, all wanting to know where he was, what he was doing, when he was coming back to the circus his life had become. He'd come to Doonbeg to escape it, for one last indulgence of his favorite pastime before the strikeliner, his pride and joy, was taken away. One weekend on the water, fishing and hauling up crab, that's all he wanted. A chance to be free before it all fell apart. The noose had been tightening for weeks, finally forcing him to come clean to Kiara about the failed real estate projects he'd been hiding. The multiple mortgages, the unpaid contractors, the suing investors, forced him to admit it all in shame. The coastal resort he'd poured everything into, the one he thought would save his business, had collapsed before it could break ground. He'd stretched too far, betting that demand for luxury condos would return. It hadn't, and now, with every call he ignored, the threats were growing. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, fraud investigations, failure, exposure, humiliation. Tomorrow he'd return his attention to his woes and decide what he was going to do. Tomorrow, or the day after, or maybe the one after that. It wasn't like he had options. He was facing criminal charges and the repossession of his home and belongings. He had no control over any of it. The only thing he had any say left in was his marriage, and even that was slipping further away with each unanswered call. He had no idea what he wanted to do, fight for the love of his life or let her go. He did know one thing: Kiara did not deserve this. She was innocent. She shouldn't have to go down with his ship or be expected to support a man who cheated and lied. A loser, an idiot, an asshole. The last 3 calls had been from her, and she'd now sent 15 texts. He couldn't bring himself to read them, so he swiped the notification screen away, put the car into gear, and started driving. He waved as he passed the old men, a polite gesture, but they only glared, his clean-shaven jaw and sanitized looks marking him an outsider, not someone they needed to acknowledge. Or maybe it wasn't that. Because country folk were generally friendly. Maybe it's that they somehow knew what he'd taken, something from the creek that wasn't his. He shook his head at the guilt creeping over his shoulders, insinuating he was doing something wrong. It didn't make sense, but every glance at the cage deepened the unease in his gut. There was something about it that put him on edge, made him feel that it wasn't his to take, and it filled him with a familiar kind of excitement. "It's just junk," he said aloud, though he couldn't stop thinking about how the seaweed wouldn't come away from the slats and how something mysterious lay within, which was most likely sludge but might be treasure, something that would help with the mess he was in, something that might help Sierra. Driving away from the inlet, following the cliffs towards Doemore and the quiet B&B he'd booked into, he busied himself with fanciful musings of what kind of treasure the cage might hold, the undulating sea dominating the horizon to his right, gently rising slopes carpeted by fields of purple orchids on his left. It was a magnificent day, all azure skies, cotton wool clouds, and the scent of salty sea spray in the air. He couldn't have asked for more. It was exactly the calm he needed before the storm clouds over his life unleashed their fury. The drive to Ayrton House took 20 minutes, and soon he was maneuvering his vehicle, boat and all, onto the gravel-covered parking lot at the side of the stone-clad building. He was the only guest that weekend, so space for his car and trailer wasn't a problem. He took his phone, the harbinger of inescapable doom, and climbed out, swinging around to the passenger side to reclaim the cage. He took time to wrap it in paper so it wouldn't make a mess when he went in. then crunched across the gravel to the door. He was eager to attack it with his knife, cut away the seaweed, and get inside. So he was hoping not to bump into the proprietor, a lovely old dear named Mary Shaw, who could talk like there would never be a tomorrow. He wasn't lucky. "Ah, there you are," Mary said, shuffling from the dining room as he entered the hall, a bright smile on rosy cheeks, dead carnations clutched in pudgy hands. "Nice day for it. Catch anything interesting?" "Not really. I was only after crab today. You can have some if you like. I'm only going to drop it at the market." He kept moving, casting her the briefest of smiles as he made his way to the stairs and started up. "That would be lovely. My Trevor used to catch crab every weekend, before he fecked off to Australia with that floozy. I was telling you about her, wasn't I? Her and her 10 ex-boyfriends, and my Trevor to be number 11 because he couldn't resist her charms. What's that you have there?" He was on the 5th step when she spotted it, and he checked to make sure he hadn't dripped dirt on her carpet. "Just an old lobster pot. Found it at the pier. It's ancient, but might be worth something if I clean it up. People will buy anything these days." "Dunmore Pier?" Mary suddenly looked troubled, and the smile had fallen from her lips. "What do you mean, found it?" "Just what I said," Miles replied, caught off guard by her change in demeanor and questions. "I think it was buried in the creek. I must have dislodged it." At the foot of the stairs, Mary creased her brow. "That might not be good, Mr. Burke. There's terrible legends associated with that place. A lot of people have been drawn to their deaths there over the years. It's a dangerous place. Haunted, some say. Or worse." "Worse?" "I don't like to talk about it. Gives me the heebie-jeebies, and it sounds ridiculous. Don't laugh now, but some say the bay is cursed. Some say it's home to the Kumara, the hound of the sea, the Marrow." "The Marrow?" Miles shook his head to indicate he'd never heard of such a thing, then resumed his climb to the landing. "Merman," Mrs. Shaw elaborated, eyes wide under a mop of gray curls as she started after him. "You know, like a mermaid, but a man. I know it sounds ridiculous, but some believe it. There are stories of it making off with the souls of the tormented who drowned or jumped from the cliff. They say it keeps their spirits locked in cages, which it hoards like jewels at the bottom of the bay." Her wide eyes were locked on the paper-wrapped cage, one hand on the banister as she climbed, the other crushing the stems of dead flowers. "That's a new one," Miles chuckled, reaching the top of the stairs. "Never knew we were supposed to have mermaids in Ireland, along with banshees and leprechauns. We've some amount of fairy tales, don't we? Don't get me wrong, Mr. Burke. I'm not a believer in such things." She'd stopped halfway up to catch her breath, but continued to stare as he crossed to his bedroom door. "But at the same time, you can't be sure, can you?" "You can't," Miles said, fishing in a pocket for his key. "That could be one of them. A soul cage, one of the Kumaras." "Hardly," he scoffed, guiding the key into the keyhole. He could hear her coming up the stairs again behind him, feel her eyes boring into his skull. "But it's a great story, and it might help sell the thing, if it doesn't fall apart when I take off the kelp." The key turned, the lock disengaged. He opened the door. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mr. Burke. If the legends are true, it's troubled souls the Kumara craves, wayward souls trying to escape." "Sorry, Mrs. Shaw. I'm exhausted, so I'm going to grab a shower and take a nap. I might stay another night. I'll let you know this evening." "Oh, and I'll bring you that crab. Hopefully it's as good as what Trevor used to catch." "I'd put that back," Mary went on as he shut the door. "Back where you found it, if you know what's good for you." "Fuck's sake," he muttered under his breath as the door clicked shut, then rested against it and braced for more. When he heard her slippered feet slogging back down the stairs, he relaxed, placing the mucky cage on his bed and spreading out the newspaper beneath it. Jesus, mermen and soul cages. I've heard it all now. Better not be a box of bloody souls. I need something good. His heart was pounding, and he had that feeling again, that nervous exhilaration he got when doing something he shouldn't. He still couldn't explain why he felt it. He wasn't gambling with his and Ciara's future, wasn't siphoning non-existent funds from account to account or cooking books. He was just messing with some shit he'd found in the surf. It was no big deal, at all. But he still felt the need to take the edge off, so he went to his suitcase for the small paper package containing a Ziploc bag of white powder, a well-used €50 note, and half an old credit card, then spent the next few minutes at the dresser sorting it out. Once satisfied, and having wiped some residue from his nose, he took the Swiss Army knife Ciara had given him for Christmas from a cargo pants pocket and prized out its largest blade. "For the man who has everything," he recalled her saying, and tears welled unbidden in his eyes. He'd had everything and never deserved it, never deserved her. He couldn't redeem himself now, even if the cage contained diamonds. But if he could make things right for her, that would give these last squandered years of his life some kind of meaning. And so, with a sharp inhalation, he knelt at the foot of the bed and started to saw. Almost immediately, he noticed it wasn't working. No matter how much he slashed, the seaweed refused to come away. He could see the blade slicing through fronds, watched them sever with his own eyes, but the slimy substance clung to the cage and refused to tear free. "What the hell?" He went at it harder, tightening his grip on the knife, jabbing its blade into the gelatinous sludge, stabbing, carving. "What is this?" And then the blade got jammed, and the knife's handle jerked out of his hand. "Damn it," he said, wiping a sweaty palm on his muddy pants before reaching to take back the knife, only to see it get sucked into the seaweed and disappear. "What?" It was sudden and noiseless, a subtle, casual motion that seemed almost normal. Miles moved his face closer, squinted to peer through the mulch, couldn't see in. "You're having a laugh." He sighed and poked his fingers into the mush where the knife disappeared. He couldn't feel it. He wriggled his fingers in further. The seaweed seemed to loosen around his hand. He twisted his wrist, and his fingers and thumb slipped inside. The seaweed seemed to shrivel up and tighten. His fingers got a hold of something solid. Then something solid got a hold of him, clamping around his hand and squeezing tight. "Miles Burke," a voice seemed to issue from within. "Ah!" Miles cried, hugging the cage to his chest and hopping to his feet. The thing on the inside pulled, and his hand slipped in up to the wrist. Miles Burke. Jesus. A strange sensation, like aggressive pins and needles, swept through him, starting in his hand and spreading fast, up into his arm, shoulder, face. "Get off!" He maneuvered the cage with the arm it was stuck on, held it against his side with the other. He pulled, he tugged, he staggered around the room as he struggled, yelled and pitched forward when he felt something bite. He crashed into a wall, lifted his head, let his tariffed gaze peer into a mirror. The face staring back wasn't his. Fear gripped his chest and he screamed, falling away from the monstrous visage, all doughy, gray flesh, mossy green hair, pig-like eyes, and moldy teeth. "Give it to me." Miles could have sworn he heard it say, before he tripped and fell back, cracking his head on the corner of the dresser and coming to rest on the floor. He dreamt then, a dream like no other, a strange collection of images and sounds that made no sense, of him lying motionless on the ground, blood painting a pool around his head, of Mary Shaw entering the room, of policemen covering him with a sheet and collecting powdery evidence, of Mary driving, walking, standing at the edge of the bay, whispering into the cage, saying, "I warned you." Your tortured soul called out, and the marrow called back. Of the cage being cast into the sea, of the dark, murky depths of a jet-black ocean, of the pig-eyed Kumara slithering from the depths to claim its prize, its cage now home to a fresh soul gleaming with torment, a treasure to be savored for eternity. Bad reflections. I am not a well person. That isn't easy to admit, even though I understand that it is important to acknowledge that as fact. I am convinced that it all started the night of the storm. After the lightning strike and subsequent power surge from the night before, both washing machines at my apartment complex were on the fritz. It was a minor miracle that we had lost power for only a few minutes, and thank God my expensive surge suppressors did their job. As a combined freelance writer/web designer, I rely heavily on my computers for my livelihood, and imagining even one of them electrically fried just makes my cringe. The electric shock that knocked me on my ass was the real highlight of the evening, though. Strong summer evening thunderstorms were nothing new for our small Midwestern city, but this one was particularly impressive. Blinding flashes lit the windows, and booming thunder rolled and rattled the panes every few minutes. Not wanting to rely on the surge devices exclusively, I decided to quit working and power all my equipment down. Reaching down and unplugging the main computer power feed at the critical moment when the lightning-induced surge came through, I actually saw as well as felt the arc as it jumped from the wall outlet, first following the cord, then my hand as I pulled the plug out. It was quite a jolt, knocked me back a few feet and flat onto my back. I don't think I lost consciousness, but my whole body tingled and I smelled an ozone smell for hours afterward. Probably should have gone to the doctor just to get checked, but I'm mid-20s and still have some lingering adolescent male invincibility delusions, so I figured I'd survive and blew it off. Lugging dirty laundry down to the basement had never been one of my favorite pastimes, but add carting it a few blocks journey through the neighborhood, and you have a whole new level of annoyance. Nonetheless, there I sat the next day, but already in a state of commingled pain and numbness from just a few minutes in the rock-hard, cracked pink plastic chair, a new John Scalzi sci-fi in hand. So far, the background noises of the machines and other patrons, including not one, but two screaming toddlers, had prevented me from successfully reading a single page. A short eternity later, the washer containing my first load quite spinning, and sounded a brief buzz to alert me that it was done. Even though the laundromat was moderately crowded, I was lucky that there was an open dryer just opposite my washer, so I dutifully drug myself out of the torture device, masquerading as a chair, and headed across the room. I bundled a large armful of my socks and tidy whities, turned and dexterously flipped open the dryer lid, only to receive another shock to my hand. This one thankfully much milder than the one from the night before. It still startled me, though, and I yelled as I dropped my armload of clothes. "Son of a bitch!" A room full of eyes shifted my direction. "Sorry," I mumbled to no one in particular, returning to my chores. After finishing, I returned to my poor man's pink throne, determined to blot out all distractions and read. 5 minutes later, I was vegetating, staring aimlessly about the laundromat. That was when I first saw it. A hole where no hole should be, reflected in the convex glass door of the ancient washing machine directly across the room from where I sat. I thought, at first, it was a smudge, or even a ding in the glass, but then I noticed the same anomaly replicated in the machine door on either side of this one. The more I examined it, the reflected dark spot, if that's what it was, seemed to float behind me, down near the floor. But when I turned to look, there was nothing. Over the next few hours, I washed and dried 3 loads, returning to watch the spot in between each. If I looked closely enough, I thought I could see it moving ever so slightly, sort of swirling and undulating. There was a hypnotic effect to it, so much so that the mother of one of the screaming kids had to poke me to let me know my last load was done. Finally finished, I stuffed my clothes into a couple pillowcases that were serving as laundry bags and staggered blurry-eyed from the building. Once outside, my head somewhat cleared, and interest in my recent temporary fixation began to wane. My focus turned instead to contemplate the work that I was now seriously behind on, thanks to the storm and extended laundry duties, as I headed for home. Walking up the steps to my building, momentarily fumbling for my keys, I caught sight of my reflection in one of the glass windows that outline the main doorway, and I froze. The spot, or whatever the damn thing actually was, had somehow followed me. I stared in confusion. It didn't seem possible, yet there it was unmistakably in the reflection, hovering in the same vicinity behind me and just above the ground, like it had appeared before. I spun my head around, and just like before, there was nothing to be seen behind me. Against my better judgment, I spun my attention back to examine the reflection in the window. The spot was indeed there, but it had changed. While I had been walking home, it had grown larger and had begun to emit flashes of light from its swirling center. Just a speck appearing here and there, briefly shining through before the undulating mass rolled and blotted it out again. And along with the reflection, there was now an accompanying sound, a faint tinkling, like a set of wind chimes, coming from the direction of the spot. Unlike chimes, though, that came and went randomly with the wind, these played a melodic tune. Their cadence captured my attention, the rhythm lulling me into a trance. I listened and I stared. For how long, I couldn't say. With some effort, I pulled my gaze away from the window and the spot, focusing down on my now clenched hands. The chimes cut off cleanly as the spot slipped from my peripheral vision. Fear replaced my confusion. I quickly unlocked the door and hurried inside, my heart pounding out a trip hammer beat. I needed to get to my apartment, but avoid anything reflective along the way. The elevator was out of the question, so I kept my head down and headed for the stairs. The stairway provided temporary safety, with its dingy concrete steps and unadorned walls. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. As I climbed, I began to inventory the hazards that still awaited me. Once inside my own door, there lurked a multitude of windows, pictures, and mirrors, both big and small. TVs, appliances, and even my computers, and all had to be avoided. I reached my door without incident and took a few moments to calm my nerves. As I waited, I couldn't help questioning the reality of what I thought had just happened. Was I really cowering outside my own door? In the hallway, I had traversed countless times, afraid of seeing some malevolent object in anything reflective. I tried to tell myself that this was foolishness, akin to a kid afraid of the dark for no apparent reason, other than it wasn't light. Or was there a better explanation? The shock during the storm. That had to be the cause, I reasoned. Maybe some brain damage, not much, but enough to make me see spots and floating objects that weren't really there, and hear things that weren't there either. Why not? I had not quite, but almost convinced myself that this could all be rationally explained. I still wasn't ready to raise my line of sight above floor level, but I entered the apartment much calmer than I had been only moments before. I thought about the little kid me again, afraid of the dark, and remembered walking through the house turning on all the lights, telling myself that even though I wasn't really afraid, the lights were just a harmless precaution. With that as my mindset, I retrieved a handful of towels and blankets and proceeded through my apartment, covertly covering anything reflective as I went. Collapsing at my desk, having covered my monitors with a sheet, I started theorizing how I could live like this until I could get to a doctor for help. I rationalized, even if the spot wasn't real, I still had to deal with its effects until I could be assured that it was gone. As I was ticking off tasks needed to stay functional, disable monitor screensavers, figure out how to go out in public, maybe wear a hoodie with the strings pulled tight to minimize my field of view, my phone rang. I reflexively reached for it out of habit and had just enough time to register that it was my mom calling before I saw it again, reflected in the dark glass of my cell phone. It floated higher now, and it was still growing, perhaps balloon-sized now. I could see variation in colors, shades of gray to black, swirling and heaving in rippling folds. The flashes of light had increased their brightness, still appearing briefly in the dark mass before being reconsumed. The chimes returned as well, grabbing my attention so completely that answering my mother's call was beyond my capabilities. I watched and listened, unsure whether sight or sound was the more compelling sensation. As my phone ringing stopped, I heard another sound, low and hidden underneath the chimes. There was nothing melodic about this new sound, and it struck a fresh fear into my mind. It resonated wet and heavy, like some ancient Lovecraftian god of old dragging itself from dark, mysterious depths. As I listened, the chimes clashed with the new noise in a strange auditory battle for supremacy. As I watched, the spot slowly grew. I could see it changing in the reflection, but knew it was occurring behind me, and at the same time, knew that there would be nothing there to see if I had been able to turn and look. Rigid with fear, I couldn't look away, helpless to alter my situation. As I sat incapacitated, a fresh horror arose. Like soft tendrils at first, I sensed what felt like a pair of many-fingered hands creep over my shoulders and down my chest. Their caress was almost sensual as they moved down to me waist, where the sensation changed to a grip. There was no real strength in the ghostly hands, but the feeling was inexplicably drawing me backward, back to where the spot awaited. Sensual became coaxing. Coaxing turned to seductive, then finally approached insistence. Unable to resist, I tried rolling myself backward as I sat in the desk chair. The chair casters did not turn smoothly against the carpet, or I might have succeeded in my retreat to God. Only knows what fate the spot had planned for me. As I flexed my legs to overcome the drag of the carpet, my loving yet meddlesome mother came to my rescue. I hadn't answered her previous call, and she hadn't left a message. Her routine in such situations was to wait 10 minutes and call again, using the time to compose an appropriately thoughtful yet guilt-inducing message to leave. The phone chirped loudly in my hand, enough to startle me and cause me to drop it. Luck being on my side for once in my life, it landed screen down. I pulled a slew of papers, coasters, and even a dirty plate off my desk, whatever was within reach, to cover it. The onslaught had ceased in a flash. I spent the rest of that night living like a blind man, I tied a shirt around my head for a blindfold and wore it constantly, not trusting myself to just keep my eyes closed. Somehow, with face recognition and Siri's help, I managed to call and check the hours for the urgent care facility a few blocks away, my plan being to arrive as the doors opened in the morning. After inexplicably getting a few hours sleep, mostly from exhaustion, and having neither eaten nor showered since the previous morning, I found myself contemplating just how best to navigate walking the 6 blocks to the doctor. I couldn't very well walk down the street blindfolded, so I had employed my hoodie idea. With the opening pulled down to just an unnerving few square inches, I ventured out. Other than sideswiping a garbage can and nearly colliding with a couple of emerging coffee shop patrons, my tunnel vision trek was proceeding without any serious issues until I needed to cross the main road. So far, I had only encountered side street intersections, with little to no traffic at this hour, but the medical facility was on the opposite side of the 4-lane. As I waited at the light, head down and listening for the chirping noise that told me it was safe to cross, I reassuringly told myself that I was going to make it, that the doctor would scan my head, prescribe a pill, or send me to some specialist who would know exactly how to cure what ailed me. Having made it this far unscathed, I was feeling just a sliver of optimism as the chirp came, and I stepped into the street. I may have been distracted, or it may have made no difference. I heard a motor racing, just a bit, to my right. Nothing particularly menacing, but enough to draw my attention. Just like answering the phone, I instinctively looked up ever so slightly to assure myself that I wasn't about to be run over. And there it was. A spotlessly clean storefront window, advertising the coming fall fashions. Spotless, that is, except for the spot I had been avoiding. The result was instantaneous. The ethereal chimes and fearsome dragging sounds, the forceful groping fingers upon my chest, urging me backward, and the sight of the ever-growing surging spot itself, all manifested collectively. Reflected in the glass, the spot now loomed, grown larger than me. Its depths beckoned, its darkness seductive. I stopped, then reversed direction in the crosswalk, shuffling backward toward the maw of the thing that had been pursuing me. I was a part of the reflection this time, and I watched as my fate unfolded behind me. The flashing lights became blue-white arcs, dancing wildly just behind me, reaching out to welcome me or strike me dead, I knew not which, when a delivery truck pulled to the stoplight and blocked the window from my view. Released, I collapsed. Horns blared, onlookers undoubtedly gawked, and a young girl actually stepped up and asked me if I needed help. I ignored them all, abandoning my optimistic hopes for a medical miracle cure. I staggered to my feet, pulled my hoodie strings tighter, and ran. I desperately wanted to run away. But how can you run away from a reflection, from an entity that follows you always? So I ran towards something, or rather, somewhere. I ran blindly to the laundromat. It made no logical sense, but logic had been left far behind sometime yesterday. As I had laid awake last night, my mind had reeled through scenarios, causes, and plans for what had been happening. The doctor had remained as plan A. My plan B made no sense whatsoever, but it flowed forward like a lifeline as I ran. Miraculously, I arrived at the laundromat without being run over or seeing another reflection. The laundromat hadn't opened yet, but that wasn't going to deter me. I pried the painted metal top off a public trash can, and with my eyes closed, beat it against the front window until it shattered. I carefully crawled through and headed for the door in the rear of the building marked Employees Only. It was thankfully unlocked. Once inside, it took little time to find something that would serve my purposes. a large screwdriver in an old toolbox. Back in the laundromat was an array of electrical panels mounted on the back wall, variously marked high voltage, danger 220/208 volts, or just electrical hazard. I had noticed these while gazing idly about the room the day before. Without hesitating to think, I pried the door open on the largest of the panels, held the screwdriver by the metal blade to assure good contact, and jammed it across the incoming leads. And woke up here in the hospital in the psychiatric ward about 2 weeks ago. Guess you know the rest, Doc. I refused to open my eyes until anything reflective was removed from the room, the curtains drawn. Not sure what else I demanded, but I got sedated for it. I do remember. Under the care of your colleagues, though, I'm calmer and less prone to delusions. In just this short time, I've progressed to where I can actually look at myself in a mirror. I don't like to, but I can do it. Well, you do seem to have made incredible progress, Mr. Buchanan. Please, just Jerry. Okay, Jerry. And I did want to apologize again for you getting shuffled about here a bit. We seem to have quite the rash of absenteeism lately. I hope there isn't anything contagious being passed around. Oh, I'm sure you'll get to the bottom of it, Doc, I said, rising and extending my hand. I wanted to thank you and your team again for all you've done. As he reached out to shake my hand, he flinched his own. Oh, got a little shock from you, Jerry. Yeah, that happens. Probably just static. Don't tell anyone, it keeps following me. All the time. I've been feeling it for days now. This eerie sensation of being watched. This morning, an envelope slipped under my door. No name, no return address, just a single line written in red ink. Come to the garden on Elm at midnight. Don't be late. My first thought was that it was a prank, maybe a mistake. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I felt that same strange, heavy sensation in my chest, the feeling of being watched. Whoever's been following me wants me to come to this meeting. I should ignore it. It's driving me mad, circling in my head over and over. It doesn't make sense. Why would anyone ask me to meet them in a garden I've never visited? I don't leave this room. I can't leave this room. The thought of stepping outside makes my chest tighten like the poisonous air. The walls aren't walls anymore. They're closing in, pressing closer each day, shrinking until no room is left. I can feel a slow constriction, like the tightening grip of a snake coiling around my chest. It was there again. I felt its rancid and sour breath hovering just behind my neck, the cold seeping into my bones. The buzzing, crawling under my skin, burrowing deep, an itch I can't reach, is maddening. I dug my nails into my arms again and tore at the skin until the blood flowed warm and sticky. It hurt, but I didn't stop. The red smeared against the white of the sheets like some twisted artwork. I laughed. I laughed because the pain reminded me I was still here, that I wasn't gone yet, not entirely. But the blood, the warmth, it didn't last. It never does. The cold always comes back, dragging me under. I've spent the whole day staring at the envelope, trying to make sense of everything. What does he mean, don't be late? I opened the envelope earlier, but it only made things worse. Inside was a single photograph, a picture of me, taken through the window of my room. The timestamp showed it was taken 2 nights ago, right around when I started feeling like I was being watched. But my room doesn't have a window. It is still me in that photograph. But how? October 12th. I didn't go. I don't know why. I sat here, staring at the clock, watching the minutes crawl by until midnight came and went. I couldn't move. My legs felt heavy, like they were stuck to the floor. The envelope is still here where I left it, taunting me. I can't shake the feeling that I wrote it. It's ridiculous. Why would I send something to myself? I checked my desk drawer where I kept my pens and paper, but they were all where I left them. Still, that handwriting is mine. I know it is. I can't deal with that right now. I didn't sleep last night. Or maybe I did. I can't tell anymore. The line between waking and dreaming has blurred into a haze like thick and endless fog rolling in from the sea. I lie there, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks. They're growing, splintering outwards like delicate spider webs. I wonder if they'll reach me, if they'll come down in shards of plaster and dust, burying me alive. I wouldn't mind. When I close my eyes, I see it clearer now. The dark mass, the shape it takes. God, it's horrific. It's all wrong. Its body is twisted, its limbs are too long, joints are bent at impossible angles, and the skin is slick and black like oil, dripping. And its face, or what should be a face, it shifts, twisting like clay, eyes forming then disappearing, mouths opening and closing, filled with rows of jagged teeth. It stood at the foot of my bed last night. I felt it staring, even though there were no eyes. The weight of its gaze crushed me into the mattress. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so loud I was sure it would burst out of my chest. I could feel it feeding off that fear, growing stronger, reveling in my helplessness. October 13th. I didn't take the pills today. They're trying to poison me. I see it in their eyes when they hand them to me. Their fake smiles stretched too thin. The red-haired one, she's the worst. She is always cheerful. She thinks I'm too far gone to notice. But I do. I notice everything. She came by earlier. I didn't like the way she looked at me, like I'm an animal. I smiled back at her and watched her flinch. She thinks I'm docile, but she doesn't know. She doesn't know what's been following me, what's been whispering in my ear. The envelope's still here, on the nightstand, staring at me. Why can't I stop thinking about it? Why can't I just let it go? The garden on Elm. It's not real. I know that. I know I never wrote it. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, I wonder. What if it's me? What if I've been sending these things to myself all along? Number. That's impossible. I wouldn't do that. I scratched at the walls today, tried to tear them down and tried to escape. I could feel it closing in, but the walls wouldn't give. My fingers bled, my nails broken, but the walls held firm, cold, and unforgiving. I could hear it whispering through the cracks. I can't understand the words, but know they're meant for me. October 14th. The feeling was more vital and intense today. It's getting closer and more aggressive. Every step I took, every corner I turned, was right there. The light stretches it out, twisting it longer and pulling it closer until I feel drowning. I've feared so many things, but nothing like this. It started when I was a kid. My stepfather had this way of punishing me when I did something wrong. He'd shove me into the closet in the basement and lock the door. I can still hear the click of the lock, that final sound before the darkness swallowed me whole. And I remember the worst day. The day it came. It was one of the longest times he'd left me there overnight. I don't remember what I did to deserve it. The punishment lasted longer than usual. I screamed at first, banging on the door, but no one came. They never did. The darkness wrapped itself around me, smothering my cries. It was like a blanket of silence, pressing in closer and closer until the only sound I could hear was my own heartbeat, frantic in my chest. The hunger came first, gnawing at my insides like a rat chewing through bone. Then, the thirst. My lips cracked, and every breath was dry and sharp. The need to go to the bathroom hit next, but I held it for hours, clutching my stomach, praying he'd let me out. But he didn't. Eventually, I couldn't hold it anymore. The urine soaked into my clothes, warm and humiliating at first, then cold and stinking as it mixed with the damp, musty air of the closet. The smell filled the tiny space, suffocating me and burning my nose. I cried, not from pain, but from the shame, the filth. And then, hours later, or maybe minutes, I don't know, that happened too. I had nowhere to go. I couldn't hold it. The shit pressed out of me, warm and sticky, and I felt it spread beneath me as I sat on the wooden floor. The smell was unbearable. My skin crawled with it, with the filth of my own body betraying me, trapped in that black hole of a closet. And that's when I felt it. I can still remember the exact moment. The darkness had changed. It wasn't just empty anymore. It was watching me. It was alive. The air had shifted and thickened, like something had slipped into the closet with me. I froze, my body trembling, my throat dry and raw from screaming. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat like a drum, slow and sickening. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. I could feel it hovering just out of reach. A presence. It wasn't like the darkness that had always terrified me. It was something far worse. Something that was feeding on my fear, on the filth, on the weakness I had become. That's when I first sensed it. Whatever it was, it had slipped into my world and has never left me. October 15th. The nurses, they're scared of me now. I see it in their eyes, how they flinch when I move too quickly, and how they talk in hushed whispers just outside my door. They think I don't notice, but I do. The way they look at me, like I'm a rabid dog, something to be caged and kept away. Good. The reddish nurse came again today. Her smile is unnatural, stretched so tight it looks like it might split her face open. She handed me the pills. Blue ones this time. I took them from her and felt their weight in my hand. But I didn't swallow them. I smiled back at her. Pulling the corners of my mouth up like that felt strange. My face was stiff, unused to the motion. I wonder if she noticed. I let the pills slip from my hand and watched them fall to the floor, bouncing once or twice before disappearing into the shadows. The shadows have been moving more lately, creeping across the floor like they're alive and hungry. I like to watch her bend to pick it up. Every time, her skirt hikes up just enough for me to see the curve of her thighs, the pale skin peeking out from beneath the hem. She does it deliberately. I know she does. She thinks I'm a vegetable, a shattered man with a broken mind locked away inside my own head. She thinks I don't notice, but she's wrong. She doesn't know I'm not alone. I've never been alone. So, she was honestly surprised when I knocked her to the floor. It wasn't hard. She's small, fragile. Her eyes widened, lips parting in shock as I grabbed her and shoved her down. Her breath hitched, a sharp air intake, and I could feel the excitement, the pulse of something dark and wild rushing through me. It wasn't me. I wasn't in control. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. I didn't want to hurt her. It wasn't me. It was the thing that's been with me all along. The thing that's been watching now, waiting and feeding. It pushed me, whispered in my prank ear, and told me what to do. I didn't have a choice. She cried out, but the buzzing in my head and the ticking clock muffled her voice. I could barely hear her. I could scarcely feel her anymore. Everything was slipping away, fading into the hum, into the dark. It's inside me now. I can feel it crawling under my skin, controlling my wants and thoughts. It's too late. I can't stop it anymore. I'm laughing again. I can't help it. The sound bubbles up from deep inside me, harsh and cracked. It echoes off the walls, filling the room. The nurse looks up at me with wide, terrified eyes, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She doesn't understand. She will. They all will. October 16th. I woke up choking on my own breath. It was standing over me, I swear. A dark mass, shifting, warping, like it was trying to decide what shape to take. My body was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All I could do was watch as it hovered, staring, the cold of it seeping into my skin like ice. It didn't touch me. Not yet. But I couldn't feel it anymore. So close. I've heard about sleep paralysis. The doctors like to throw that term around like it explains everything. But this was different. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a dream. It was real. It was there, watching me with eyes that didn't exist. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The laugh just bubbled up out of me, desperate, choking. I laughed because what else could I do? What else do you do when the thing following you for years finally finds its way into your room? They put me in isolation after that. She said I was disturbing the others. I was screaming, they said, but I wasn't. It was the laugh. It's funny, really. It's funny how no one else sees it. The lights flickered today. I counted the seconds between the flickers. 3, then 5, then 8, then 1. Erratic. Like something was playing with the switch. It's toying with me now. That's fine. Let it play its game. I scratched at my arm until the skin broke. The nurses tried to stop me, but I didn't care. I needed to feel something. The pain is real. The blood is real. Thick, warm, dripping down my fingers. I let it pool in my palm for a moment, staring at warmth. It and watching it glisten in the pale light. It's funny how thirsty you get. I tasted it, just a little. Just enough to remember what it feels like to be alive. It tastes like metal, sharp and bitter, but it's mine. They found me after that and tried to patch me up, but they couldn't stop me from bleeding. They can't stop what's already inside me. The buzzing is louder now. It's deafening. October 17th. The walls. They're wrong today. I don't know how to explain it, but they feel different. The texture is off, as if the paint is peeling away to reveal something underneath. I scraped at the surface until my fingers bled again, nails tearing against the plaster. I had to know. I had to see what was underneath. It was hollow. Behind the walls was nothing, just darkness, an endless void stretching out forever. I could feel the pull of it, dragging me in and whispering promises of relief and escape. But it's a lie. I know what's really waiting in that darkness. It's there, waiting for me to slip. I won't. Not yet. October 19th. Everything is sharper today. The edges are too bright, too hard. The air smells of chemicals, bleach, ammonia, and something sweet and sickly. I gagged when I woke up, the stench clinging to my skin and the sheets. The buzzing in the light is louder than ever, a constant hum that vibrates through my teeth, rattling my bones. I saw it again this morning, not just a flicker. No, this time, it was there, fully formed, standing in the corner, watching, waiting. Its face, oh God, its face, was mine, twisted and distorted, like looking into a broken mirror, the features all wrong, stretched, eyes too big, mouth too wide, filled with jagged teeth. I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw and my voice gave out, but no one came. No one heard me. They never do. Do you hear that? No, you don't. You're sitting there, comfortable, safe, reading this like it's just the ramblings of a madman. But you're wrong. It's not me that's crazy. It's you. You don't see it yet, but you will. You'll feel it soon enough. It's always there, waiting, watching, lurking in the corners, just beyond the light. I'm sorry for you. I really am. You'll understand soon enough. You'll realize it's been watching you too. It'll slip into your room and mind, just like it did with me. And when it does, when you finally see your shadow, don't be stupid. Don't be like me. They won't believe you, and it'll only make it stronger. Be clever, be silent, the ghost of old Jeb Brown. Childhood memories of walking home from school on Halloween Day, cool breezes under overcast skies, the scratching of dried leaves on the pavement as the wind pushed them by. They crunched under my feet and made a swoosh, swoosh sound as I walked through them. When I got home, I raked them up into mounds and cannonballed into them with a splash like crunchy water. My old Labrador retriever with his gray face would find the energy to join in the fun, pouncing on top of me with a vivaciously wagging tail. The neighborhood was always decorated for fall. There was nothing creepy or scary at all. Hay bales and scarecrows peppered the subdivision along with the old, dried-up corn stalks. Every house had a jack-o'-lantern. We'd spread out old newspaper over the table to carve my pumpkin, cutting off the top. I'd scoop out the sticky fruit and separate the seeds. Mom would wash the seeds and salt them up before baking them in the oven while I cut out triangular eyes, a nose, and a goofy smile with only a few teeth. A candle was always placed in the center, giving the pumpkins a ghoulish glow. Homework was done with haste. A shower was taken early. Dinner was served before dark. My costume was never anything fancy. A plastic character's suit with a hard-to-see-through plastic mask that was held on by a thin rubber band. Yet, I was proud of my costume, excited to be for one night the character I chose, all ruined by an overly concerned mom who demanded I wear a jacket. The streetlights came on and the subdivision filled with kids accompanied by adults. There were vampires and princesses, robots and witches. Some costumes were homemade, some were store-bought, some were extravagant, and some were cheap. None of us kids cared. It was Operation Candy. My parents released me like I was a hungry jackal looking for a carcass to feed from. Mom would always stay home to hand out the candy, while Dad double-timed it to keep up with me as I ran from house to house. The Fambros' house was always a good one. Their mom would dress up as a silly scarecrow, much like the one from The Wizard of Oz, and sit out on the front porch. She would ask us if we wanted a trick or a treat. If you answered trick, she would do cartwheels or sing and dance, something funny to entertain us kids. I'd pick trick just for a laugh. The Bedwells' home was my favorite. On their porch, they had a scarecrow they called Old Jeb Brown. It was made of denim overalls and a red and black plaid flannel shirt stuffed with straw, boots for feet, gloves for hands, and a jack-o'-lantern for the head. Inside the head, they put a speaker. Mr. Bedwell would sit on the couch inside and wait for trick-or-treaters to walk up and then scare them. Even though I knew it was coming, he always managed to scare me. They would always invite us in and tell us the story of old Jeb Brown. Old Jeb once owned all the land the subdivision was built on. For many years, he lived a reclusive lifestyle on the edge of town. He rarely accepted visitors, and never, when they were unannounced. He built a rickety barbed wire fence around his property and posted signs that read, "No trespassing. Violators will be shot on sight." He posted those about every 50 yards or so, according to the story. People, for the most part, took that warning seriously. However, every Halloween, there were those few who would bang on his door and yell "trick or treat." Old Jeb would greet them at the door with a rifle in hand. People would go scurrying away. Jeb would always fire a warning shot to let them know to never come back. Late one night, on Halloween, 1953, a group of teens felt it was their place to teach old Jeb a lesson in politeness. They snuck up his driveway, threw a flaming bag of poo on his porch, banged on the door, and hid. Jeb never woke to put out the flaming bag, and it caught his porch on fire. The teens who were hiding in the shadows ran off. Jeb died in the house fire. Mr. Bedwell went on to tell us that the following Halloween, those kids went missing, and that they weren't the only ones. There have been cases of missing teens on Halloween over the decades. He believes it was the ghost of old Jeb Brown exacting revenge on bad kids on the anniversary of his death. As a young kid, the story did a good job of scaring me straight. But when I turned 13, it was just a bunch of malarkey. At that age, I hit a growth spurt and was too big to trick or treat. The little things like jumping in the leaves, carving jack-o'-lanterns, and the magic of autumn were lost on me. Frankly, I hated the season because it meant school was well underway. That year, Halloween fell on a Friday, and two of my friends stayed the night at my house. They told me there were other ways to have fun on Halloween than trick-or-treating. We waited until my parents went to bed. We grabbed toilet paper, all the eggs we had, and a couple ball bats. We snuck out of the house late that night. We found a neighbor's house with no lights on and threw toilet paper in their trees, covering it. We then egged their car using half the eggs we had. Then we destroyed their decorations and smashed their mailbox. A light came on in the house and we took off running, dodging behind another house so we wouldn't get caught. We found it all exhilarating, laughing at our antics. We took a shortcut through the yards to the opposite street, Mr. Bedwell's street. My friends saw old Jeb the Scarecrow and immediately wanted to ruin it. I told them I didn't want to mess with that house, that I knew the guy, but they didn't want to listen. They started with the toilet paper, just like the last place. Then they moved on to egging the front of his house. My one friend, Jimmy, grabbed a large landscaping stone from Mr. Bedwell's yard and threw it through his bay window. They turned to run, but Jimmy didn't get away. Old Jeb jumped up and grabbed him. Me and my other friend, Ricky, screamed in fright, but were not about to leave our friend. We started hitting the Scarecrow with the bats, but the bats didn't faze it. By then, the lights were on in Mr. Bedwell's house. He was furious, but ran outside to help Jimmy. The Scarecrow knocked Mr. Bedwell down and ran off with Jimmy. We chased old Jeb all the way to the graveyard. There, Jimmy started sinking into the ground, and the Scarecrow fell into a limp pile of clothes and straw. We grabbed a hold of Jimmy and pulled with all our might, but something stronger was pulling him down. We screamed for him to hold on, but the dirt was rising up over his face. His hands slipped from our grasp, and he was gone. We didn't have time to mourn or dig. The Scarecrow stood back up, alive, and stomped towards us with intent. We scrambled to our feet and ran, but not fast enough. Old Jeb caught Ricky and started dragging him down to the grave. I grabbed Ricky in a bear hug, hoping to keep him above the soil, but I started to sink as well. I let go of Ricky and climbed out. I looked at Ricky, I saw terror in his eyes, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to end up like him and Jimmy. I was scared, so I ran, and I didn't look back. When I got home, I quietly snuck back inside and went to my room upstairs. I looked out the window, and there it was, staring up at me. I sat on my bed watching it. It never moved. Not until the sun came up and it collapsed into a pile of straw and clothes again. 30 years later, and I still have to lock myself in my house every Halloween night. The ghost of old Jeb Brown sits outside and waits, R.E. The heat, death of the sun. Reality was having a Monday with a capital M. Never mind that it was Thursday, or that Monday always began with a capitalized M, or that both Mondays and Thursdays only existed on Earth. That was all beside the point. Ron liked that about Earth, though, the calendars. Really, humans had something special going on with them. They were great with organizational skills, and he appreciated that, given his role as manager of accounts payable. He was just one cog in the existence machine, but lately Ron felt he might be the only one to really give a hoot about the overall health of the industry. The atmosphere of the Division of Material Validity office was drab, sure, but he found his job of keeping existence running to be interesting. There were an infinite amount of vendors that manufactured the various components of reality, and he enjoyed his role of ensuring that those accounts all got paid for their hard work. Ron's day started off fine enough. His boss, Mike, prattled through the morning meeting with his usual ennui before giving him a checklist of urgent tasks. Ron spent his pre-lunch hours ticking off boxes. Pay the universe's monthly time invoice to keep months a thing. Contact maintenance overdue space-time fabric repair on collapsing wormholes in Sector 12. B. Review discrepancy in inertia. Report on galactic planetary rotation. Forward any Earth RFPs titled, "Oh God, please save us," or similar to upper management. He got through the first two in record time, considering he paid time ahead of schedule, but the Monday-ish nature of the Thursday kicked into high gear as he scrolled through an inbox full of dismally titled RFPs. He'd always thought the DMV overpaid reality's freelancers, so he was perplexed as to why there seemed to be so many slackers recently. Humans weren't the only ones having issues. The fluxers on Zemulus 237 were freaking out about Zemulus 237 suddenly rotating backwards, but given their sheer amount of messages, humans were definitely making the biggest fuss. He'd been scrolling for the past 15 minutes, and he still hadn't reached the end of this morning's RFPs to the Savior Department alone. Ron glanced across the aisle at Florence's cubicle and saw that she wore a similarly exasperated expression as she looked through them all. It would seem that endless earthen pleas to the heavens were clogging up everyone's inboxes. Ron, frankly, was at his wit's end. He dialed Mike's office phone extension. Why is Earth spewing out so many salvation proposals all of the sudden? Sun's getting too big and hot. They're having a rough go of things. Ron blinked and scrubbed at his forehead. That's odd. I paid Fusion's invoice. I know. They got upper-level orders to churn out more energy, though. Kicked it up yesterday. He sank back into his office chair and rolled his eyes to the ceiling. And upper management didn't communicate that with the rest of us because... Mike snorted. It was just a little tweak to Fusion's workload, not a big issue in the overall grand scheme of things. Ron sighed. Okay, thanks. Forwarding now. Yep. He set the phone back on the receiver and began forwarding messages up the chain of command, but paused at one rather offensive title. He read the message, feeling a bit nosy as he did so. From Alice Kincaid at Earth.Universe.2, all at DMV.Universe. unsolved.universe.subject, RFP. We're dying down here, asshole. Hey, God. CNN just announced we have about 6 months before we're cooked. The sun's getting hotter by the day. I can't go outside anymore. I thought we had like 1 billion-ish years left. At least, that's what the Science Museum exhibit said when I went as a kid. Scared the hell out of me. Always has. But 1 billion years is a damn long time. 6 months is absolutely not. I would love it if you could make the sun go back to normal. I haven't done everything I wanted to do yet. Please, it's too hot. It hurts. My skin is... Please. More sincerely than I've ever been about anything. Ever. Alice Kincaid. Scowling, Ron called Deity. The line rang for a few long moments, but he was pleasantly surprised when the CEO answered. Hello? Hi, D. How's it going? Hey, man. Same old. What's up? I just had a question about Salvation RFPS. Ron could hear Deity typing something as he responded blandly, Shoot. Are you guys doing anything about him? I've forwarded several to you and the board, but they just keep coming. I was going to mark them as spam and wanted to check if you're receiving them without me forwarding. Yeah, spam them. Got it. Ron considered whether it was professional to ask further questions, but his curiosity outweighed his propriety. Are you going to respond to them? Take any of Earth's projects on, I mean? Deity laughed in an offhand way. Nah, I'm phasing out the planet. Humans are too destructive. Tarsonis's Jebulons have their act together a lot better, so the board voted to sell off Earth and invest over there instead. It's a stabler market. He felt a hot stab of dismay at the news and swallowed thickly. Understandable, but can I say? He gave a little laugh. I mean, I know it's way above my pay grade, but... But? Ron chose his words carefully as he said, Humans have been our top client for a few 100,000 years. They've had some centuries of poor performance every now and then, sure, but we've always kept an overall mutually beneficial relationship. It's unfortunate we're ending it on a bad note. Deity clicked his tongue. Speak more freely, Ron. I don't mind hearing your opinion. Ron huffed a chuckle. Don't write them off our books. I like what they put out. Would be a shame to not be able to get their stuff anymore. What sort of stuff? Ron thought for a moment. Well, I enjoy all the love stories. They've got some great food, too. I tried a sandwich once. Phenomenal. And I owe them a debt for coming up with calendars. Deity deliberated silently before replying. Jebulons just created a far superior timekeeping system, and it didn't take them almost 300,000 years to do it. Switch to using theirs. The market's moving on, Ron. Progress with it. I appreciate your input, though. Tell you what, I'll bring up your notes to the board at the next meeting. We may be able to work something out. Ron's shoulders relaxed. Thanks, D. Appreciate it. Yep. Have a good one. The line went dead. Ron turned his attention back to Alice's message, his cursor hovering over the Mark as Spam button. He decided to archive it instead. Ron brooded the entire commute home and concluded that he found the DMV's culture and overall philanthropic approach to be increasingly lackluster. Phasing out Earth was a bad move, plain and simple. He didn't understand the decision, even after hearing Deity's explanation. Jebulons had exited the primitive stage of existence far quicker than humans had. True, but their demeanor was overzealous. The DMV's mailroom was constantly overwhelmed with fanatic offerings, and their adoration always felt just a tad too desperate to be authentic. Humans showed their appreciation for reality in subtler ways. they were intentional with it, more honest. A message of gratitude at receiving a tight embrace from a missed loved one. A whispered, "I owe you" when swimming through crystal water. A salute when a sore knot is worked out of a long, aching muscle. Deity was a great guy, a fantastic CEO, but he had a distinct flair for the dramatic that often left Ron dealing with a nightmare at the office. For instance, around 6,000 years ago, Deity hedged a bet that chemistry wouldn't be able to synthesize enough water for Q3 on their current budget, so he'd ordered Ron to increase their payment. Mike had warned the CEO that doing so would generate far more water than could be tolerated by planets with life forms. But Deity had simply responded that those life forms were underperforming. He'd ordered that a handful of profitable creatures be retained for improved reproduction, and the task fell to Ron to proceed with the higher payment. To this day, Ron felt terrible about flooding every planet across 4 galaxies. He settled into his nightly routine, but he couldn't get Alice's message out of his mind. He pulled up the archived message as he ate his supper. After a stiff drink, he forwarded the correspondence to his personal account, then forwarded it to Alice again with an attached reply. From Ron at personal.universe.2, Alice Kincaid at earth.universe.subject. FW. FW. RFP. We're dying down here, asshole. Hello, Alice. Strictly speaking, it goes against protocol for me to send this message, and you are the first life form to receive such a communication from me, so my apologies for any disruption to your evening. Admittedly, I'm unsure how this message might be received by a human. The purpose of this correspondence is to extend my sincere condolences for your current situation and assure you that your concerns regarding your imminent demise will be thoroughly discussed at the next meeting of our board. Please note, however, that this does not guarantee immediate action. We appreciate your patience during this time. All the best, Ron. Manager, Accounts Payable, Division of Material Validity. Ron sipped on his second drink, feeling a bit more at ease with the situation. His satisfaction dissipated when she returned a response in seconds. From Alice Kincaid at Earth.universe.2. Ron at personal.universe. Subject: indistinct shriek of terror. I apologize, but I need Japanese text to perform the conversion as requested. If you'd like me to demonstrate this capability, please provide Japanese text that includes kanji characters, and I'll convert it according to the guidelines. Ron set down his glass and frowned as he replied. From Ron at personal.universe.2, Alice Kincaid at Earth.universe. Subject: indistinct shriek of terror. Hello, Alice. Your quick response is appreciated, but I am confused as to your meaning. Best, Ron. Alice's reply was instantaneous. From Alice Kincaid at Earth.universe.2, Ron at personal.universe. Subject: indistinct shriek of terror. Get out of my head. Get out. Get out. Are you reading a bloody email? God, it hurts. It hurts. Ron winced, pulled out his phone, and found Alice's alternate contact in the DMV database. He dialed the number for a video call. The image of a hyperventilating woman curled into the fetal position on a dirty floor appeared on the screen. She was covered in patches of charred skin, and her hair was matted with blood in some places. Ah, hello. this is Ron. Please forgive me for calling you at this hour, and for the pain you experienced receiving my initial messages. I wasn't aware my previous form of communication would be painful for a human." She let out a shriek upon seeing him appear in what looked to be her kitchen. Her hands tore at her hair as she mumbled incoherently, "Are you all right? It wasn't my intention to startle you." Alice shot to her feet and tugged a large chopping knife from its holder, brandishing it in his face. What are you?" Ron's brow furrowed. He'd always assumed humans would recognize a DMV agent, considering all the mail they sent. As I said in my earlier message, I'm the "What the hell?" "Manager of accounts payable at the DMV," he continued as she panted a string of vile curses. "I read your RFP meant for the Savior Department, and I felt just awful about what's happening to your son. I thought I'd give you an update personally, maybe alleviate your fears a bit." Her subsequent screech was nearly unintelligible, but Ron deduced through the wailed expletives that she was confused about the nature of the DMV. "Please, miss, calm yourself. I'm not technically in the room with you." Alice's eyes bulged, but she stilled, and the knife clattered against the tile floor. "The division is quite hard to explain to a life form on your plane of existence, but the short answer is that we manage and regulate that plane." She jabbed a finger in his direction. "So you're the one responsible for making the sun about to explode?" Ron's teeth tugged at his bottom lip. "It's a bit more complicated than that." He lost the battle against his better judgment and gave the terrified woman a simplified explanation of Deity's decision. When he finished, she sank to the floor in a heap and put her filthy head in her hands. "It will be all right. The board will..." Alice breathed a raw laugh. Ron looked at her with concern as the sound grew in broken intensity. "Miss..." "Angels," she choked out between gasping fits of laughter. "And God and reality itself are all just a bunch of corporate goons, and I'm nothing more than an underwhelming employee, and..." Her laughter morphed into weeping. "Oh, that is cruel." She was an underwhelming client, technically, but Ron didn't correct her. "Is there anything more I can do to help you at the moment?" He cringed at the utter devastation on the woman's face as she turned to nod at him. She was silent for a long moment, staring blankly at the heat-yellowed paint of the wall, before she muttered, "Take me back to that museum all those years ago, so I can tell my 10-year-old self to write a lot of books, to read a lot more of them, to learn the guitar, to become a rock star like I always wanted, or maybe an author." Her voice broke as she slowly stood back up. "To hurry up and find the love of my life, because I've spent it entirely alone, to quit my soul-sucking office job, or to not even take it in the first place, to hug my mom long and hard every chance I get, to tell my dad I forgive him, to make peace right then and there with how insignificant I am, because I am." Ron ground his teeth at the volume of her final sentence, shocked at how viscerally uncomfortable the word insignificant made him feel. "I'll be sure to speak to Deity tomorrow at..." Alice threw the knife with all her strength at his projection, ending the call. "I'm sorry, Ron. I am. But there's nothing I can do. We don't undo what's already been done." Chris, the head honcho over at Time, was being irksomely dense. Ron grumbled, gesticulating at the big machine before them. "I know that. Nothing needs to be undone, just done over again. Run Earth's clock backward a bit, only 20 years. Come on, I'll owe you one. Memories on board. They already primed the woman. We're just waiting on you." Chris ran a hand through his silvering hair. deity approved this? Not, as such. Sure did. For one human woman? Consider it an experiment. You've ran back time before, for far duller reasons. I don't know if I'd consider what we needed done with that woman in the Chaplin film to be... Ron waved a dismissive hand. Chris, seriously. The time boss rolled his eyes. Fine. Who, when, and where am I sending her? Ron explained Alice's plight, and Chris pushed various buttons on the machine. Just send back her present consciousness into her childhood self. That's it. You do realize that this might kill the woman. We've never reversed memory back into time before. He shrugged and scratched his nose, looking at a sleeping Alice on the screen in front of them. It's an experiment. Chris nodded, then cranked a few more dials. Adult Alice didn't move, but the child Alice on the adjacent screen. Ron cringed as the child screamed and screamed and screamed. Chris sucked in air through his teeth. Child Alice drew frightened looks from the other science museum patrons, until finally being subdued by her mother. Ron scratched his temple, chewed the inside of his cheek. The girl screeched, over and over again in her mother's arms. What's the point? Chris shut the machine off, locking adult Alice into her child body forever, or at least until the sun exploded. He clapped Ron on the shoulder. Call that a success? Ron was silent for a beat, then muttered, Seems like the quick death of the sun might be preferable to the existential crisis brought on by simply thinking about the slow death of it. Think she'll appreciate her life more, this time around? Dunno. Sun's still going to explode on schedule. Board's not budging on it. He sighed. No one will remember her in the end, even if she does make something out of her life. Or maybe they will for a little while, now that she can change some things. That's all most of us can hope for, really. To not be insignificant. To do something important with our lives. He shot a triumphant smile at Chris, feeling overall very pleased with himself. At least he was able to do this. Change this small thing to help such a lovely planet. Chris shot him a confused look. Oh no, she can't change anything, man. She did all this screaming the first time around when she learned the sun was going to explode in 1 billion years too. I told you, nothing can be undone, but she will be able to watch it happen all over again with her adult memories and reasoning. Maybe she'll just learn to be grateful. Humans struggle with that. If you asked me, that's why deity's blowing him up. Ron paled, his grin evaporating. The time boss stretched his arms and cracked his back, and didn't notice the color drain from Ron's face. Anyway, let's get lunch. You're buying insatiable darkness. Not the kind that comes when you close your eyes. This is something else. Heavy, dense, like the world's been erased. It's pressing down, sinking through me. I can't breathe, can I? My chest should be moving, doing something. I don't know why I expect that. Then, something else. A noise. No, not a noise. A memory. I love you, babe. A woman's voice, warm, laughing. I can almost feel her next to me, see her face, smell her perfume, something like freshly peeled oranges. Gone. Just like that. I try to hold on to it, but it slips away like smoke. Something aches where the memory was, filling empty spaces, like something lost. Am I lost? No, I'm here. Here in the dark, here in the earth pressing in on all sides. It is cold, deep in my bones, in my flesh. No, it's wrong. I feel something slipping, a part of myself loosening, unraveling, sinking into the dark. I try to reach for it, to grab hold of me, but it's fading fast, sinking below the surface like a drowning man. I tell myself, I'm still here, I'm still someone. But it feels like a lie. Why can't I move? I try to lift an arm, a hand, anything, but everything's sluggish. My fingers claw at nothing, something below, above. Heavy, settled. I should be moving. I should be. Then it hits me, clear and sharp, like a broken bone. I'm dead. I'm dead. I don't breathe. My chest is still cold, rotting. A surge of panic hits, a sensation I didn't know I could still feel. I close my eyes, or maybe they were already closed, and try to piece together bits of memory clinging to me. A bright day, a laughing face, a small sticky hand in mine. Gone. Gone before I can feel it. The weight around me presses harder, like the ground itself is claiming me, holding me down. I don't know how I know, but I know I shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be this. I should be